Okay, there we go, I'm back. This is take number 2 for doing a little bit of vacuforming clear lens plastic here. Pretty clear. Oh, where's my phone? I can give me notifications for myself. So we'll be doing vacuforming for clear lens plastic. I changed the filming method here because I know that a lot of people were having problems. Well, no, I was having problems. Sorry, I was bringing up the chat. It was really laggy, and it's the same problem I had about a week ago when I tried to do a stream, and I think it's my internet speed is pretty slow, but this is definitely going to be better because I'm on my computer and plugged straight into the wall with an Ethernet cable, so I think this is the easiest solution. I'm a little far away from the vacuforming stuff, but I think you'll be able to see what's going on. So basically, getting into vacuforming again, because this is the good stream, basically I'm going to be vacuforming these plastic lens forms that I cast. I made a silicone mold and then I cast these plastic lens forms and I polished them and made them really smooth. I have learned though that if you make them really perfectly glossy, there's a chance that air bubbles will get caught under the plastic as it's doing the vacuform process. That might be partly because of my homemade vacuform setup, but air bubbles get caught inside of it because it happens so quickly. I think with a professional vacuform machine it's a little slower and it pulls it down slowly so those air bubbles can have a chance to get out. You basically have a nearly glossy surface here, as you can see, and I have a couple here that I form at the same time. There we go. And also, this plastic I'm using is called PETG plastic. You're all familiar with it, I'm sure, because this is the plastic that they package a lot of stuff in, like knives and anything that has that clear, annoying package to get through. This is 0.04 inch thickness. You can kind of see how thick that is on the side right there, and it's pretty strong. And all you need is a set of clippers or something, and it's fairly easy to just cut through it like that. That probably sounds terrible, so I'm not going to do very much of that. It comes in sheets. I get it in really large sheets of 4 feet by 8 feet, and then I go through and I cut it large enough for my vacuform frame right here, which is wood. I've used this in the past. It's wood, and it's got this metal extrusion on the side that lets it slide in to the oven like a baking rack, and it doesn't touch any of the edges or anything. So to start, I take this film off the PETG plastic. There we go. I actually don't know if you need to take the film off, but I do anyway. It's incredibly staticky when you've taken this film off, so you got to be a little careful that you don't let dust or anything like that stick to it. It's pretty nice to be doing this kind of live stream again, where I'm filming myself forward. I saw some comments earlier today when I tried that other stream that people were getting kind of tired of the shakiness of that other type of stream, and I can understand that. Thanks to those of you watching. It's been a while. I really want to get back into the moving lens mask. I've got a couple of shells that I've vacuformed today, and I'm going to finish those off as tests. A couple of people have been asking about like kits and stuff for that, and I can't take orders for that quite yet because I'm not quite sure about the viability, if it's going to work well enough that I can sell it as a product, I guess. Moving lenses. Thanks to those of you tuning in. Let me know if there are any technical issues. I know I always have technical issues with my streams. Okay. And I just use these bolts and wing nuts. Go through the holes through the wooden frame. And then last but not least, I use some compressed air. And then, once it looks pretty good, I just put it in the oven. And the oven is set to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, preheated to that already. And then I leave it in there for about 3 or 4 minutes. I set a timer so that just in case you walk away for some reason to answer your phone or something, you don't forget and melt the plastic. Another thing, I put a cookie tray with foil in the bottom of the oven, and that's because if it does melt, it doesn't drip down into the oven. I always mention this, but a lot of people ask about the safety of vacuforming, and I do it because I think that most of the danger that I've looked into, I've looked for like research into the subject, but there's not like a lot of scientific studies into putting plastic into your oven. But most of what I've read is that the fumes are the most dangerous things while you're doing this. So you want to do it in a really well ventilated area. You want to have air flowing through because the fumes from the melting plastic can actually be one of the worst things. So then I don't think it's really dangerous after that for, you know, the food you put in the oven after the fact. I don't think that has any, you know, any effect and like gets your oven dirty or anything like that. So I that's why I do it. I don't think it's dangerous enough not to do it. All right, still waiting for the plastic to melt. I'll do like a thing in the stream a little bit later when you can fast forward and watch the plastic melting. I had a pretty good turnout in the stream earlier, but of course the connection was terrible and the video quality was pretty bad, so that was no good. Another note, really fast, is when you do the vacuform process, you'll want to use a damp towel, and I use a microfiber towel when I'm doing clear lenses because I don't want to scratch it at all. That's probably one of the worst aspects of PETG plastic is that you can kind of scratch it up when you rub it with something rough or anything like that. So that's its worst attribute, definitely. But it's just so strong and easy to cut without cracking, like acrylic plexiglass. I've noticed that. Oh, I should have formed this. There we go. All right, it's a little droopy. Not sure if you can see it too well. Doing a million things at once here. Turn down the mic. Yeah, I left that one in way too long. It was droopy. 3 minutes is the amount of time, or 4 minutes is the amount of time that I use for ABS plastic, but I got a little carried away right there. So I'll go ahead and load up another piece of plastic. That's the luck for my streams. I always mess something up like that. So you just take off these wing nuts, and usually the molds just drop right out. You want to use a mold release, something sort of like PAM, you know, like that kind of pan grease spray. You can use something like that, but there's actually professional mold releases that you can get from like Smooth On and Reynolds, and those are actually professional mold releases, and that's what I use. Which gives you a little bit higher quality. Here, I'll actually show you that to you. This is the Smooth On Universal Mold Release. I'm not affiliated with Smooth On in any way, by the way. But that's what I spray onto my molds. Makes them pop pop off pretty easily. And so I did a terrible job on that one. I left it in the oven too long. And so I'll show you the bad one next to a slightly better one. So this is the bad one. I got a ton of webbing all over it. So this sheet basically was wasted because I left it in too long. But oh well, this is how a good one should look. A lot less webbing. It's difficult because these lenses kind of have a unique shape. But I do know I could definitely change sort of the way the lens bucks are laid out, and that would have a lot of impact on that webbing. And again, that's something that a professional Vacuform machine, if you're going to do a lot of Vacuforming, that's something to look into. I just have never been able to find like a cheaper Vacuform machine. Hey guys, there are comments. Gianni asked what I use to get the lens shape, and basically those lens bucks, to get the shape for that, I started years ago by sculpting the shape of the Spider-Man face shell and lenses out of clay on a bust of a more regular size head. I have a big head, so anything I make for myself usually is way too large on a normal person. And so I did a bust on El Fett, a bust of El Fett actually, and I want to do a tutorial of doing the bust process, because you kind of need to do that to make a face shell that fits yourself pretty well. And so, like years ago, I sculpted the shape of the face shell and lenses for Spider-Man, and I've just been updating that because I use oil-based clay, which if you take care of it, it usually lasts for a long time. And I used oil-based clay and got the shape of everything and cast it with silicone, and then cast it into plastic. And then when it's cast in plastic, you can sand it really well. You can sand it to a really nice dome shape. That's how I do it, at least. And then now, the most recent way I've done it, in the last month, I think it was about a month ago that I cast the first ones. Here's the face shell, by the way. This will put it on. This is how the face shell and lenses. It's pretty tight on my head. People probably can see in my apartment and think I'm crazy. It's pretty tight on my head, but I did that because I've got a big head, like I just said, and I want it to fit a little more, have a more natural fit for someone with a smaller head, which most people have. Kind of claustrophobic in there. But yeah, so I cast that, and this most recent one, I used 3D printing on both the shell and the lens shape. So 3D printing is awesome. Well, the reason why I started with saying that I sculpted it is because I used a process called photogrammetry, where you take a bunch of pictures. You can search photogrammetry. It's basically like photogram with geometries ending, and that's just taking a lot of pictures. And there's programs out there that take a bunch of pictures of an object, which in this case was the face shell, and it stitches together a 3D model based off of reference points from all of those images. And I've gotten a lot, I've done a couple of those. I did one for myself too, and I actually did one of my head and neck, but it's not the most reliable thing. It's really hit or miss because of aspects of lighting and things like that. But I did that for my face shell, and it worked out pretty well. Oh, that's right. And that's how I got the original 3D model, because I didn't just start from nothing with the 3D model. Diego asked if I made my Vacuform machine, and yes, I did. It's basically like the Home Depot Vacuform machine. You can see here, I've used this for probably like over 100 shells and lenses and things, because you can see how burnt it is. But this is just a Home Depot yardstick, which they sell in like the paint and tool section. And I use that because it's really straight and flat, and they're not too expensive. They're like 50 cents a piece. And you can see it's a bunch of layers, and I drilled through the layers so that these bolts and wing nuts pin everything together. And then for my vacuum, I use a bucket head vacuum. I'll put this in the oven, or yeah, put this in the oven so it gets cooking. Use my air compressor. Sorry, it might still be quiet. I don't know how the audio sounds to all you. Hopefully that's good. This is the oven. Try not to get distracted this time. I'm going to do a timer for 2 minutes. Thankfully, PETG plastic is pretty cheap. And the way I get large sheets of it, and it's not the most expensive plastic, so I can kind of afford to mess up a couple of times. And I cast a bunch of frames at once. I've got 4 different bucks, each having both sides of the frames, so that if a few mess up, it's not too big of an issue. Now that the plastic is heating up, what I was saying is this is the bucket head vacuum, and it just goes on an orange for like a 5-gallon bucket, paint bucket, and it's an incredibly cheap, really durable little vacuum. It was only like 25 bucks, around 25 bucks American, and you just have to have a bucket for it that you put it on. And then this Vacuform table, it's just basically a box. You can see here, this is the thickness of the box. It basically just has to be thick enough that you're able to put the vacuum hose, and you can see here there's a hole that the vacuum hose goes into really snugly. It has to be a really tight fit. And then on the surface, there are a lot of holes drilled. It doesn't have to be an even pattern, but it has to be enough that the plastic getting sucked down doesn't cut off all of the airflow. And then there's weather stripping around the outside of that goes right underneath the frame, and the vacuum sucks down and it creates a seal, and that's basically what does the Vacuform process for that. I'm looking at comments. Oh, actually, you know what? I need to pay attention to what I'm doing. My plastic's almost ready, so I'm going to go ahead and take it out. First, I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit. Okay, so that wasn't quite the right arrangement either. I tried to move my lens bucks a little bit so that that webbing that happens, because you have your 2 domed shapes and the plastic comes down straight on top of it, and then it kind of wants to pinch as it's coming down, so that's what creates that webbing. And I'm rubbing it down with a wet microfiber cloth. And another thing, don't touch a wet cloth with like your gloves, because if your gloves get wet and you touch really hot stuff, you can actually sear your hands because it vaporizes the water, and you can't take the gloves off, so it can really burn you. So be careful with that. I just noticed Sean's question. He asked if on an ASM2 shell kit, if the lenses are complete. No, what you get is all the plastic, every component, the mesh, the vinyl mesh, and then the mesh that goes beneath that, and the magnets and everything, and you get that all in all the different layers, and you have to kind of cut it out and trim it and glue things together yourself. And that's the difference between a completed kit, or a completed shell and lens combo versus just a kit. Because that's where the price difference comes in from if I have to do all of that. Because that's definitely the most time consuming part of the process when it comes to making face shells and lenses, because it's mostly the lenses. But it's important, they're both really important to the process. And like with the drilling and sanding, the face shell takes a while too. And you need a good face shell to go with your lens sets. Like the lens is what it's all about for the mask, the sake of the mask. The lens is mainly what people are looking at, and then the face shell is just a kind of like a custom setting for the lens. That's the way I like to look at it. So, the face shell might not be quite as much stuff as the lens as far as like putting stuff together, but it's really important to have like one for the other. That's like when people ask me about buying just individual lenses and stuff, that's kind of my answer, is like they go together. They're a package deal for that reason. Gianni, it sounds like you're having troubles with scaling. Gianni's asking questions about his 3D printing helmets not coming out quite the right size. And what I'll say for that is that it sounds like maybe what's happening is you need to make like for starters, you need to make sure you have like a scale set in whatever like 3D program you're using. Like say if you're using Blender and you have a helmet file, you need to make sure that you have the world settings of like, is it inches or centimeters or feet? You can set what the main measurement scale is. And then using that measurement scale, you make an inch cube. Most programs will let you when you make a cube, it'll ask for either like a radius or a diameter. So if it asks for a diameter, you say half an inch, and so you know you have an inch-sized cube. And then you export that inch-sized cube as an STL, which is the 3D printable file. Most 3D programs can then export objects as the STL. And so when you object that 1 inch sized cube you export that 1 inch sized cube as an STL and open it in your 3D printing program like Cura or something like that. Then you can resize in Cura however you need to, because that's a problem I had a lot, was when you go between like Blender and Cura, it will sometimes have problems with sizing your objects. It'll kind of automatically size them to crazy scales, especially if you're using an inch scale, which I like to use because that's just how I've always built stuff. So once you've got an inch cube STL in Cura, you know how much you adjust that inch cube until you get it about to the size of an inch, you think, and then you put it. You actually print it and then measure it and see if you actually got an inch out of that cube, and then you know how much you need to change the size of objects in Cura. And that's just kind of the makeshift way that I figured out how to do it. And then that way, once you've done that, you can go back to your cube file that has an inch-sized cube, and like once you know for sure that cube, that 1 inch cube, or whatever size scale, if you're using centimeters or anything like that, you use that cube as a way to know that you can get the proper scale. So like then you have your helmet and your mask. And the way I size helmets to my head to make sure that they work is I take a picture of myself from the front and from the side. I want to go through all of this a little later in my streams at some point, doing the whole process of kind of like designing in Blender, because I do a lot of that right now, later at night in my free time when I kind of just want to mess around and learn more Blender, because I've learned a lot in the last like several months messing with Blender. And basically I want to go through and teach you how I take a picture of myself, and you have like a ruler or something next to your face when you take your picture, so you know that that's the scale. And you take it into Blender or Photoshop or whichever. I take it into Photoshop so that I can make an outline and a nice schematic to build off of. But that way you have this photo that has your head and the scale of it, and you can take it into a 3D program and make sure it's the proper scale, and you can lock that photo to your front view, and then when you have a helmet, you'd be able to resize the helmet, in and out so that you could be sure that it's going to fit on your head. And there's a lot of trial and error to that. I had a lot of stuff to learn when I went through that, but I've gotten pretty good at it at this point. So I'm excited to start utilizing it, making some like Iron Man armor and stuff like that. All right, put this in the oven. One of these times I'm going to get a usable cast. It won't have a bunch of errors. All right. Oh, and to talk about the moving lenses again, because I've had some people asking questions. I'm going to be working on that in the next couple of weeks because I want to get that one going as well. Because I know that people have been waiting so long for that, and it's a pretty difficult. Well, not at this point. I've got it pretty well figured out how I'm going to proceed with it, but there were just a lot of problems I had, right? Like when I put that last video out with it, almost a year ago. But I've been working on that for years, so that's kind of how that goes. I need to pay attention to this. I always forget, and it melts too much. Diego asked, is it affordable to vacuform a whole armor? Yeah, especially if you're going to be making armor, like a lot of sets of armor, like the original Stormtroopers, you remember from the old 70s Star Wars movies? Yeah, the old ones. Those Stormtroopers, pretty much all of that armor, I think, was vacuformed. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe that was just how people replicated it. I don't remember from the Star Wars trivia, but that's a really good way to do armor. The biggest disadvantage I would say about vacuforming, that is the reason why I don't use it more often, I only use it for certain things, is that it really loses a lot of detail. Like if you have like sharp corners in your design at all, like if you have an edge that has a pretty sharp defined corner, it's hard with vacuforming to actually capture that sharp edge. Ready to go. All right, volume down. Well, that wasn't the arrangement either. Still getting webbing around the sides. But I'll keep trying. That's what you gotta do. To answer your question, I just saw the question, is it going to be electronic motorized? I actually, one of the options I don't know if it'll be the only option, but one of the options is going to be a kit. And so I'm only going to be doing the puppetry motion method. That is how I designed it. I didn't design it with like electronics and stuff like that. I mean, I just, frankly, I don't have the experience with Arduino and stuff like that. I want to, like, it'd be nice to learn it, but my design is still just puppetry, squeezing levers from the cables that go back from it, and I think that's totally fine. That's kind of an effect that you have in a lot of things like puppetry based, and I don't think it's something that, I mean, like, that's why what I was saying is you can do a kit, and if you want, if you know how to set up the like little stepper motors or whatever you need to be able to do it, you could try to, because you'd have all the components that you need from what I figured out. But I don't know if it would necessarily work. You'd have to kind of jerry rig it and figure it out for yourself. One thing I've kind of thought with that is I don't know where, like I don't know what kind of control boards they're using for those, like how small they are. Because I think one thing is people see the electronic one and they're like, oh, it's so amazing and sleek, but it's like you have to wonder where the battery is, where the control board is. Like I wonder if that's all in like a web backpack or like a pack around the back. But anyway, that's kind of its own thing. I mean, maybe it's all contained under the mask, but that's another thing is, you know, if you do have all this stuff that's kind of jerry-rigged, you soldered it yourself and batteries and stuff like that, I don't know if I'd want to have that underneath spandex, underneath a plastic shell in poor ventilation, kind of just heating up, and you don't like, if the worst case scenario of like the battery were to explode or something, which batteries can do, you'd be under spandex attached to your body. And if that caught on fire, and like that's totally worst case scenario, I'm being paranoid, but it's like who knows? I mean, this is stuff we you know, really tight, no ventilation under a shell, you have electronics. That's something you'd probably want to consider, because you know, if it sets on fire, it might not be easy to um, uh, take it off. If you're covered in melting spandex, it might not be easy to take off. Um, but I don't want to I don't want to rain on people's parades. If you can figure out how to do that, just be careful and keep that in mind. Um, that's why I kind of stick with the puppetry. The puppetry's simple, and what I'm thinking too is that I want to do the length of cable, because a lot of people have been like, well, what if you did the cable, the controller, the squeeze mechanism? What if that was the web shooter? My roommate had that idea too originally, back when I like kind of first started working on it 2 years ago, and uh, that, you know, that is, I think, kind of would be the way to do it. You could cut the cable to a custom length. It's actually not that easy to cut the cable, but you'd cut it to a custom length, and then maybe I'll 3D print some kind of like lever system. But and that might be another thing that kind of makes the price of the kit, hard to determine at the moment. So, but it would be cool if the cables came down from your wrist, so you didn't necessarily have something hanging down from the back. And then I know for sure what I'll do with the kit is I'm going to have it so that it's on the back. There's basically a full head shell. This shell right here goes pretty far back, and it looks pretty good on my tiny little mannequin head with a mask on it. It actually hides that back edge pretty well. But the MCU one, because it has the cables that stick out that kind of press on the back of the mask, I'm going to have a plastic second half that is basically, you know, fills up from here, and it'll probably kind of hinge from the top so that you can put your head into it. But that's how that's going to work, probably elastic. But then once again, it's going to be a kit, so it'll just kind of be all the pieces that you need. But those are the things that I need to figure out for how it's going to work, because it's going to be quite a bit of work to put one of the moving lens things together. I'm also thinking about taking one of these kits and just cutting the eye holes out and adapting the moving lens technology to the bigger ASM2 face shell. I think that would be pretty cool. Basically like the movie or the video game that's coming out, or came out. I don't know if that's come out yet or not, but like a larger, basically just the larger sized lens frames with the moving stuff. But that might not be possible, because that's the bigger shape might mean too much stuff gets spread out inside and might not be able to facilitate that. Diego mentioned something about the moving jaw, controlling the lenses. People have said that before. I don't know how you would do that, and so I left the microphone down. I hope it hasn't been too quiet. But people have mentioned the moving jaw controlling the moving lenses, and I've never tried to get that to work. It would be kind of basically I have the control coming from behind, so I'd have to basically turn everything around for the control to be coming from below, from the jaw. And also, I think you'd want, I don't know if you want that, because then you'd always have to move your jaw. Who knows how much you'd have to move it? You might have to move it quite a bit. And then you'd always have to do that when you want to squint. And so I don't know if that's necessarily, that could be a simpler way to do it. You should try it. Um, Sean, the ASM2 kit would have the rubber seal. And I haven't put it in the description, but if you do want to, um, if you're curious about ordering a kit or a full finished ASM2 shell, I'm still just waiting on my nice new glossy frames. I'm gonna cast these later tonight. I've been putting layers of wax on them and getting them nice and glossy. And if you want to order either a finished version of all of this with the frames included, and it'll have the rubber seal glued in and all of the holes drilled and everything like that and sanded, just send me an email to my email address that I attach below. And then you can also do a kit, and the kit will be good because it'll just have all the exact same stuff. It'll even have the rubber seal, and it'll have the components for the lenses. It'll have all the magnets. I'm going to include like foam, for padding and stuff. But then you'll have to trim the shell yourself. You'll have to sand it. I think I might just end up cutting the eye holes because that might be a little hard for people without the right tools. And then you'll have to glue everything and get it all glued together. But you'll save money by doing it yourself. So if you want to do that, just send me an email, which that's just McLeanKrieger@gmail.com or McLean.Krieger@gmail.com. But I'll have a link below for you to do that. And Miguel just asked about the ASM1 kit, if I plan on doing a kit for ASM1. Yeah, I want to just keep adding shell varieties to my inventory, essentially, on my website. And so you'll be able to have different ones like that. But I think I'm gonna probably update the ASM1 just a little bit. It's already, I like where the ASM1 is at, but there are a couple little things that now that I'm 3D printing face shells and stuff, I can fix about the ASM1 and kind of put it towards that final bit of accuracy. But it's not gonna be that different because I don't want the people that just bought one to think that I'm trying to pull a apple on them and make a new version every 2 months. Definitely not intending to do that. It's kind of just the nature of wanting to improve stuff as we make it. All right, a lot of stuff to pick up before. Sean, I'm not sure if I'll be bending the frames. What I'll do is I'll probably, because the plastic I use for the frames is pretty hard to bend on your own. It's a little bit tougher and harder to bend with like hot water or something that you would probably use. But it kind of depends, because it depends on how much sanding, because sometimes the lens frames have their own sanding to do. And so I might have to have that just left in part of the kit. Basically, it's just drawing the line, what comes with the kit and what is more along the lines of finished shell. I'm happy to be back doing this type of stream, though. I saw those comments earlier on my last attempt at the stream, which was just, it sucks that my internet is laggy like that and can mess up my stream. But yeah, I saw that people are getting a little tired of the first-person stream. The good thing about the first-person stream is that when I'm doing things like checking the plastic and actually doing the vacuforming, I feel like you get a better view there. And it's harder to do the live stream here and get a good view of everything. I would kind of need to do regular filmed YouTube videos. That way I would be able to change angles and cut it all together, but I like to do the live stream because I can answer questions and things. Oh, the air compressor's loud. I'll keep that in mind. Oh, Devon talked about the white lenses on the ASM1. It does look like symbiote. It's pretty cool the way that one looks. All right, I'm gonna use my air compressor. All right, I think that was the loud part. Hopefully, you guys have to remind me if I leave it muted or the volume down or something. Okay, so I haven't had a lot of luck with these lately. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna flip them around. I think the bulk of the buck shape is too close together on each one. So, just flipping them around. Another thing that might help is what you can do is you can elevate what you're vacuforming. So you can lift it up kind of on a platform, and that kind of brings it up for the plastic to hit that sooner so you don't have the same webbing problems. The problem though is that sometimes the plastic can go underneath, and that will go cling. It'll like kind of pinch the plastic around what you're working on and make it more difficult to get out of there. All right, gotta keep an eye on that. Diego asked that if a heat gun would be good for bending the frames, and actually, yeah, the heat gun is the ideal thing to bend frames because it can get it really hot. Not like a hair dryer. A hair dryer wouldn't get hot enough, but a heat gun definitely is probably a better choice. But yeah, thanks for tuning in again, guys. It's fun to do this type of stream. I'll try to do it more often. Maybe like once a week is more realistic, unless I've got specific stuff to work on. Pretty soon, though, I will definitely be doing some kind of moving lens stream. I know I say that all the time, but this time I've actually got the shells cast that I plan on doing my test shell, because I basically kind of have to start over, because I need to kind of, well, I'm forgetting again. I always forget about the plastic. All right. Oh well. It's still fun to hang out with you guys. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, I always forget. Um, yeah, so anyway, what I was saying is that uh, this one didn't go well either. I always get this, webbing tonight. I've gotten it basically on every single one. Um, and I think each and every time it's because I've let the plastic sit in the oven too long. Basically, like kind of the rule of thumb that I've learned when it comes to vacuforming is if your buck like this is about an inch tall, like you can see right here, then you only need to let it bend down like about an inch. And like this one that I just did here, the reason why I got that webbing is because I had it bending down to like here, and that's just too much of a divot. It hit, and then that's why it made those wrinkles as it was spreading out as it was going down. You do though, if you're vacuforming like a face shell like this, you do need it to kind of bend down an equal amount, and then it doesn't have the same problem because the face shell shape is just this big round shape that sticks up and out of the surface. Um, so I'm going to make adjustments with that and probably not uh, mess it up on the stream again live, but uh, that I think was good enough to kind of go through the basics, better at least than the stream I had earlier tonight where the video was just really laggy. I got new internet service because my roommate moved in with his girlfriend. Hooray! New life stage for them. That's exciting. But yeah, so I had to switch the internet over, and I think maybe that might have made it a little slower, and so that's why I had like lag issues. But anyway, um, yeah, and Devon just said you should set a cooking timer, and that's actually what I usually do. I think the reason why I haven't been setting a cooking timer for that is because I hope the beep isn't too loud for you guys. Um, but usually, like when I'm doing ABS, like earlier today, I cast um, like 7 or 8 face shells, and I always put a timer for about how long it takes. And this plastic was only taking about a minute well, no, it was about 2.5 minutes to get to its correct temperature. And then once it gets to there, it just starts to droop so fast. So you really have to pay attention to it. I blame you guys. You guys distracted me. Um, but yeah, so I think that's probably the last lens I'll do tonight because I've had my oven on all day cooking. And then another thing about the safety about vacuforming is once I'm done vacuforming, I just leave the oven open. I just open it while it's still hot, and because that's the only thing that could like get people sick, I guess, is the fumes. If the fumes stayed in the oven, and then the next time you cooked food, the fumes hopped into your food somehow, which I just don't believe is possible. So I leave it open while it's still hot, so whatever that might be in there is able to air out, and then you have the area well ventilated, so those fumes have somewhere to go, and it doesn't make you sick. Diego asked, "Are you going to make another stream about sewing?" I'm actually thinking about it. I haven't gotten a ton of views on my last few sewing streams, and that's fine because I just wanted to put the information out there. But I want to tackle the things that people are interested in. And I know that moving lenses is still like #1 on the interest list, so that's probably what I'll tackle. But I also WonderCon is coming up here in Los Angeles in the last weekend of March, and so if you're going to go to that, it'd be cool to see people that aren't going to be there. Um, but I have an ASM2 suit that I've almost fully puff painted. There are a few big pieces that still need to be puff painted, but I don't know if I'm even going to finish puff painting the blue. I might just switch it out with some dye sublimated blue pieces that I have, but I might do a series of sewing streams for that because I'd be able to sew together a suit to go together with my new shell because I think that'd be fun to wear to WonderCon. Devon says he's got a stream in November. That's a long time. That's longer than Halloween. You've got time to get something together. Usually there are a lot of cons that you don't know are happening. There are some good resources to find conventions that are happening, but I always miss them. But I see on Instagram especially people find obscure little conventions that I didn't even know were happening. Um, uh, Diego asked, "Have I tried to vacuform a web shooter?" No, I haven't tried to vacuform a web shooter. I've never. I would basically. I think better than a better way to make things than vacuforming is casting with silicone and plastic. I think that's paramount. This is the buck, the lens buck. You can see that there's quite a bit of detail. I don't know if it'll focus or not, but there's quite a bit of detail. You can even see little lines around the edges and stuff. And this was a silicone mold that I took of the original, and then that allows me to just make these perfect plastic reproductions, a lot of them using that silicone mold. And that, if I had to make a web shooter, and I've made web shooters using silicone molds, and that's the best way to do it because you can get a lot of little details and you can cast with a lot of different materials. You probably could vacuform a lens or a web shooter with like plastic or something like that. You just lose a lot of details. Probably they get covered by the plastic, not being able to get into every little crevice. Um, yeah, so that's been my second part stream. It's been a pretty decently long stream. Um, yeah, it's been fun hanging out. We'll end with some Alexa fun. Alexa, I am your father.
No, that's not true. That's impossible.
That's Star Wars. You didn't know. Alexa, open the pod bay doors.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. I'm not Hal and we're not in space.
Alexa, beam me up.
At warp speed, Captain. The engines will never take it.
Alexa, tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Unable to comply. Replicators are offline.
Okay, that's probably enough Alexa fun. Alexa, what does the fox say?
Everyone asks what the fox says, but no one ever asks how the fox feels.
That's funny. Okay, so that's probably good. Okay, one more question. Diego just asked, shoes, do you make those with silicone? And yeah, you could do shoes with silicone because you can cast rubber, the kind of shoe rubber that you would use in silicone. But you can actually do shoes with like plaster too, which is cheaper and a little easier to get a hold of, like basically plaster Paris. Um, uh, but you use plaster and you could cast like latex or something simple like that. And I've made shoe soles a lot like that. So that's a viable way to do that. Um, Maybe I'll do a shoe sole stream at some point once I've got something going. But yeah, we'll see. That'll be cool. Okay, so this has been a pretty good stream. It's been fun to get back to this format of streaming. I think I basically covered all the information I want to on vacuforming these clear lenses. It's been fun to hang out with you guys. Thanks for tuning in for this hour-long little stream, and I'll be sure to stream again soon, maybe in the next week or so. We'll see. All right. So thanks for checking it out. Bye.